Ramayana from Sri Ramcharitmanas. We have done 20 readings so far. We have finished the Balkand. We are into the Ayodhya Kand. And this particular section we are going to read today describes the journey Sri Ram is preparing to take for his exile to the forest for 14 years. So in this section, it's depicted how our attachments come true. And even though Sri Ram is God, but he is depicting here that when you come into this world in human form, you have to go through this mundane life existence and with all these attachments of people around you, and how you need to deal with that in the real world. And being a symbol of compassion, Sri Ram is consoling everyone because everyone is sad because he is leaving Ayodhya. But that's also part of the Leela, and uh, we'll continue with the part where he prepares for the journey and he is talking to all his followers. Take care, all of you, my most clever citizens, to see that none of my mothers is smitten with the pangs of separation from me. In this way, Sri Ram consoled all and cheerfully bowed his head at the lotus feet of his preceptor, invoking Lord Ganapati, Goddess Gauri, and the Lord of Kailash, and receiving the blessings of his Guru. The Lord of Raghus proceeded further. There was great lamentation as he sallied forth. The piteous wail of the citizens was revolting to the ears. Evil omens appeared in Lanka, and Ayodhya was plunged in grief, while the abode of gods was overcome with a mixed feeling of joy and sorrow. When the spell of unconsciousness broke, the king woke and calling Sumantra thus began, Ram has left for the woods, but my life refuses to depart. I wonder what joy it seeks after by clinging to this body. What agony more severe than this can I have that will draw my breath out of my body? Then recovering himself, the king said, Follow him, my friend, with your chariot. Too tender bodied are the two princes, and delicate of frame is Janak's daughter. Pick them up on the chariot, show them round the forest, and return after 3 or 4 days. If the two strong minded brothers refuse to return, for the Lord of Raghus is true to his word and firm of resolve, then do you entreat him with joined palms. My lord, kindly send back the daughter of Mithila's king. When Sita gets frightened at the sight of the jungle, avail yourself of that opportunity and tell her my advice in the following words. The parents of your husband have sent this message to you. Please return home, my daughter. There is much hardship in the forest. Now with your parents and now in your husband's home, stay wherever you please. In this way, try all possible means. If she comes back, there will be a support to my life. Otherwise, all this will end in my death. Nothing can avail against an adverse fate. So saying, the king dropped unconscious on the ground, exclaiming, Bring Ram, Lakshman, and Sita and show them to me. Receiving the king's command, Sumantra bowed his head to him, and having got ready a most swift chariot, went to the outskirts of the city where Sita and the two princely brothers were. Then Sumantra delivered to them the king's message, and with humble submission persuaded Sri Ram to ascend the chariot. Having mounted the chariot, Sita and the two brothers set out on the journey, mentally bowing their head to Ayodhya. Finding Ayodhya masterless with the departure of Sri Ram, all those who had assembled there following in their wake with an agitated mind, Sri Ram remonstrated in many ways, an ocean of compassion that he was, and the crowd turned homewards. But dragged by the affection they bore for him, they came back and joined the party once more. Ayodhya presented a most dismal appearance, as though it were the dark night of final dissolution of the universe. The men and women of the city looked like ghastly creatures and were frightened to see one another. Their houses appeared like so many crematories. their retainers like ghosts, and their sons, relations, and friends like messengers of death. Trees and creepers in the gardens withered, while streams and ponds repelled the eyes. The numberless horses and elephants, animals kept for pleasure, urban cattle, katak birds, peacocks, cuckoos, chakravaks, parrots, and manas, cranes, swans, and chakors, all stood restless due to their separation from Sri Ram. They looked like so many pictures drawn here and there. The city resembled an extensive and thick forest full of fruits, and the many men and women residing therein represented so many birds and beasts. God assigned Kaikeyi the role of a Bhil woman who set the whole forest in a fierce blaze. The people could not bear the fire of separation from the chief of Raghus, and they all ran away in distress. They all came to this conclusion in their mind: there can be no happiness without Ram, Lakshman, and Sita. The whole community will live where Ram takes up his abode. Without the hero of Raghu's race, we have no business in Ayodhya. Having thus firmly resolved, they followed him, forsaking their happy homes, which were the envy of gods. Can the pleasures of sense overpower those who hold the lotus feet of Sri Ram dear to their hearts? Leaving the children and aged people in their homes, all the citizens accompanied Sri Ram, and the Lord of Raghus made his first day's halt on the bank of the Tamasa river. When the Lord of Raghu saw his people overwhelmed with love, his tender heart was much afflicted. Lord Sri Ram, who is all compassion, is readily touched by others' pain. Addressing them in affectionate, soft, and agreeable tones, he comforted all in ways more than one. He also gave them varied instructions in their moral duty, but overmastered by love, they would not turn back even though urged to return. Sri Ram could not afford to take leave of his amiable disposition and loving nature. The Lord of Raghus thus found himself in a fix. Overpowered by grief and toil, the people fell asleep, and the deluding potency of gods further helped to benumb their mind. When 2 watches of the night had passed, Sri Ram addressed the minister in endearing terms: Father, drive the chariot in such a way as to leave no tree. By no other means can our object be accomplished. Bowing their head to the feet of Lord Shambhu, Sri Ram, Lakshman, and Sita mounted the car, and the minister Sumantra immediately drove the chariot now in one direction and now in another, thus confusing the tracks. All the people woke up at daybreak. The Lord of Raghus has gone, they loudly exclaimed. Nowhere could they find the tracks of the chariot, and ran about in all directions, crying, Ram, O Ram! It seemed as if a bark had foundered in the ocean, and a result of which the party of merchants that had boarded it felt much agitated. Everyone explained to the other how Ram had forsaken them, perceiving their distress. They condemned themselves and praised the fish, and said to one another, A curse on our life without the hero of Raghu's race. If God has torn us from our beloved, why did he not vouchsafe death to us on our asking? And the reason they are praising the fish is because the fish dies as soon as it's taken out of water. Thus, wailing in a variety of ways, they all returned to Ayodhya full of remorse. The anguish of parting was terrible beyond words. Everyone survived in the hope of seeing Ram on the expiry of the term of exile. Men and women alike started religious observances and fasts for ensuring Sri Ram's return. They were as miserable as the male and female chakravak birds and the lotus flower are in the absence of the sun. Accompanied by Sita and the minister, the 2 brothers arrived at Sringaverpur. Beholding the celestial stream Ganga, Sri Ram alighted from his car and fell prostrate on the ground with great joy. Lakshmana, Sita, and the minister too made obeisance, and Sri Ram rejoiced in common with them all. A fount of all joys and blessings, the Ganga brings all delight and drives away all sorrow. Narrating numerous anecdotes connected with it, Sri Ram gazed on the waves of the Ganga and told the minister, his younger brother Lakshman, and his beloved consort the transcendent glory of the celestial stream. They took a plunge in the river, and the fatigue of the journey was gone, and their hearts rejoiced when they drank of its holy water. That he whose very thought relieves the great toll of transmigration should feel fatigued shows that he imitated the ways of the world. The glory of Raghu's race, who is a fountain of pure existence, knowledge, and bliss, performed actions similar to those of a human being and which constitute a bridge to cross the ocean of mundane existence. When Guha the Nishad got this news, he gladly called together his near and dear ones, and taking by way of presents fruits and roots in baskets slung across their shoulders, he proceeded to meet the Lord with infinite joy in his heart. Prostrating himself on the ground and placing the presents before the Lord, he gazed on him with great affection. The Lord of Raghus, who is won by natural affection, seated him by his side and inquired about his welfare. The sight of your lotus feet, my lord, is the root of all welfare. I can now count myself as a blessed man. My land, house, and fortune are yours, holy sir. My family and myself are your humble servants. Do me the favor of visiting my town and confer dignity on me. Let everyone envy my lot. Everything you have said is true, my wise friend, but my father has commanded me otherwise, said Sri Ram. For 4 years and 10, my home shall be in the woods, and my mode of life, dress, and food shall be that of a hermit. Hence, my staying in a village would be hardly advisable. Guha was deeply distressed to hear this. Beholding the beauty of Sri Ram, Lakshman, and Sita, men and women of the village feelingly said, what sort of parents, O friend, can they be who have sent such children to the forest? Other people said, the king has done well in that God has thereby rewarded our eyes. The chief of the Nishads then pondered within himself and perceived a charming Ashok tree. He took the Lord of Raghus to the spot and showed it to him, when Sri Ram declared that the place was beautiful in every way. The people of the town then returned home after paying their respects to him, while the chief of Raghus retired for performing his evening devotions. In the meantime, Guha prepared a soft and beautiful bed of kusha grass and tender leaves and spread it on the ground. He also placed besides him cups of leaves, sacred, delicious, and soft, full of fruits, roots, and water. Having partaken of the bulbs, roots, and the fruits along with Sita, Sumantra and his brother Lakshman, the jewel of Raghu's race, lay down to sleep while his brother kneaded his feet. When Lakshman perceived that his lord had fallen asleep, he rose and asked the minister in soft accents to retire. As for himself, he got ready his bow and arrows, and sitting at some distance in the posture of a hero, he kept watch. Guha called his trusted watchmen and stationed them at different points with great love, while he himself went and took his seat beside Lakshman with a quiver fastened to his waist and an arrow fitted to his bow. When the Nishad chief saw his lord lying on a bed of grass and leaves, he felt great sorrow in his heart due to the excess of love. The hair on his body bristled, tears flowed from his eyes, and he addressed the following affectionate words to Lakshman. The king's palace is naturally charming. Even Indra's residence can hardly stand comparison with it. Its beautiful attics are built of precious gems and are so lovely as though the god of love has constructed them with his own hands. Free from impurities, exceedingly marvelous of design, abounding in exquisite luxuries, and scented with the fragrance of flowers, they are furnished with lovely beds and lighted with gems, and are full of amenities of every description. Again, they are equipped with coverlets and sheets, pillows, and cushions of various kinds, all soft, white, and charming as the froth of milk. It is such attics that Sita and Ram used to sleep at night, and humbled by their beauty, the pride of Rati and her consort, the god of love. Those, were, those very Sita and Ram are now lying on a pallet, exhausted and uncovered, a sight one cannot bear to see. The same Lord Ram, whom his father and mother, his own family, and the people of the city, his good natured companions, men servants, and maid servants, all cherished as their own life, sleeps on the ground. Nay, Sita, whose father Janak is famed throughout the world, whose father in law is King Dashrath, the chief of Raghus and an ally of Indra, and whose spouse is Ramachandra, is lying on the ground. And adverse fate spares none. Do Sita and the hero of Raghu's race deserve to be exiled to the woods? They rightly say, fate is supreme. The foolish daughter of Kathā has wrought a cruel mischief in that she has brought trouble on Sita and the delighter of Raghu's race at a time of enjoyment. The wicked woman has played the axe in felling the tree of the solar race and plunged the whole universe in woe. The Nishad chief was so distressed to see Ram and Sita sleeping on the ground. Lakshman spoke to him sweet and gentle words imbued with the nectar of wisdom, dispassion, and devotion. No one is a source of delight or pain to another. Everyone reaps the fruits of one's own actions, brother. Union and separation, pleasurable and painful experiences, friends, foes, and neutrals. Snares of delusion are these. Even so, birth and death, prosperity and adversity, destiny and time, and all the illusions of the world, lands, houses, wealth, town and family, heaven and hell, and all the phenomena of the world, nay, whatever is seen, heard, or thought of with the mind, has its root in ignorance. Nothing exists in reality. Suppose in a dream a king becomes a pauper, and a pauper becomes lord of paradise. On waking, the one does not gain, nor does the other lose anything. So must you look upon this world. Reasoning thus, be not angry, nor blame anyone in vain. Everyone is slumbering in the night of delusion, and while asleep, one sees dreams of various kinds. In this night of mundane existence, it is the yogis alone who keep awake, yogis who are in the quest of the highest truth and remain aloof from the world. A soul should be deemed as having awoke from the night of the world only when he develops an aversion for the enjoyments of the world of sense. It is only when right understanding comes that the error of delusion disappears, and then alone one develops love for the feet of Sri Ram, the Lord of the Raghus. O friend, the highest spiritual goal is this: to be devoted to the feet of Sri Ram in thought, word, and deed. Sri Ram is no other than Brahma, the supreme reality, unknown, imperceptible, beginningless, incomparable, free from all change and beyond all diversity. The Veds ever speak of him in negative terms, not this. For the sake of his devotees, earth, the Brahmans, cows, and gods, the gracious Lord takes the form of a man and performs actions by hearing of which the snares of the world are broken asunder. Realizing this, O friend, shed all infatuation and be devoted to the feet of Sita and the hero of Raghu's race. While Lakshman was yet recounting Sri Ram's virtues, the day dawned, and the joy and delighter of the world woke up. After finishing all purificatory acts, Sri Ram, who was all pure and wise, performed his ablutions and sent for some milk of the banyan tree. He, as well his brother, then matted the hair of their heads, a sight which filled the eyes of Sumantra with tears. With great agony in his heart and a doleful face, he joined his palms and spoke in most piteous accents. The king of Kaushal, my lord, charged me thus: take the chariot and go with Ram, let him see the forest and bathe in the Ganga, and then speedily bring the two brothers back. Setting at rest all their doubts and scruples, do bring Lakshman, Ram, and Sita back to their home. The king has commanded me thus. I shall, however, do as my lord bids me. I assure you, having supplicated in this way, Sumantra fell at the Lord's feet and wept like a child. Have compassion, my darling, and take steps to see that Ayodhya is not left without a master. Sri Ram raised the minister and thus admonished him, Dear one, you have investigated the truths of religion in their entirety. Shibi, Dadichi, and King Harishchandra suffered untold hardships for the sake of virtue. The wise kings Rantidev and Bali upheld virtue even through many trials. There is no virtue equal to truthfulness, so declare the Agamas, Tantras, Veds, and Purans. That virtue I have found by an easy road. By abandoning it, I shall be reviled in all the three worlds. To a man who is highly esteemed, infamy causes agony as terrible as a million deaths. What more shall I say to you? By urging something in reply, I shall incur sin. Clasping the feet of my father and conveying my repeated obeisances to him, pray to him with joined palms, Be not troubled in any way on my account, dear father. You too are extremely kind to me as my own father. Hence I pray with joined palms. Sire, do everything in your power to see that my father does not feel miserable on account of grief for us. Hearing this conversation between the Lord of Raghus and the minister Sumantra, the Nishad chief and his people felt much distressed. Thereafter, Lakshman made some poignant remarks, but the Lord stopped him, knowing his words to be highly objectionable. Feeling shy, Sri Ram adjured Sumantra by his own self not to convey Lakshman's words. Sumantra then reproduced the king's message. Sita will not be able to endure the hardships of the forest. Therefore, both Ram, the chief of Raghus, and yourself, Sumantra, should endeavor to see that Sita returns to Ayodhya. Otherwise, left entirely without any support, I shall not survive, even as a fish without water. There is very comfort both in her parents' home as well as with the parents of her Lord. Therefore, Sita can live at ease wherever she pleases at a particular time till this adversity ends. The piteousness and affection with which the king's entreaty was attended cannot be expressed in words. On hearing his father's message, the all-merciful Lord admonished Sita in countless ways. If you return, the affliction of your mother-in-law and father-in-law, your preceptor, and all your near and dear ones will cease. In response to her lord's advice, King Videha's daughter said, Listen, most loving lord of my life, my all-compassionate and supremely wise master. Can a shadow be torn away from its substance? The sunlight can never exist apart from the sun, nor can the radiance of the moon leave the moon. Having submitted her loving entreaty to her lord, she spoke these charming words to the minister. You are just like my own father or father-in-law. It is therefore most undesirable that should urge something in reply. And Sita says this because it is unmannerly on the part of a Hindu woman to open her lips before the male elders of her husband. So Sita continues, It is due to grief that I am constrained to address you. Do not take offense at it, sire. In the absence of the lotus feet of my lord, all other ties of kinship are of little account. I have witnessed the glory of my father's fortune. His footstool is kissed by the crowns of the greatest monarchs. Bereft of my lord, my parents' home, which is such an abode of bliss, does not attract my mind, even in an unguarded moment. My father-in-law is no less than a personage than the king of Kaushal, the suzerain lord of the entire globe, whose glory is manifest in all the 14 spheres comprising the universe. Even Indra, the lord of celestials, goes ahead to receive him and seats him beside himself on his throne. Such is my father-in-law. Ayodhya is my abode, agreeable is my family, and my mothers-in-law love me as my own mother. But without the dust from the lotus feet of my husband, none affords me pleasure even in a dream. On the other hand, impassable roads, forest regions and hills, elephants and lions, lakes and streams that cannot be crossed, wild tribes such as coals and bheels, deer and birds, all these are delightful to me in the company of my beloved Lord Ram. Falling at the feet of my father-in-law and mother-in-law, request them on my behalf not to grieve the least for me, for I feel naturally happy in the woods. I have by my side the lord of my life, as well his younger brother, the foremost of heroes, both carrying a bow and a quiver full of arrows with them. My mind does not feel the toil of the journey, and there is no giddiness or sorrow. Therefore, pray, grieve not on my account, even unwittingly. On hearing these soothing words from Sita's lips, Sumantra felt uneasy as a serpent at the loss of its gem. He saw not with his eyes and heard not with his ears, and he was too agitated to speak. Sri Ram comforted him in many ways, yet his heart would not be pacified. He made many efforts even to accompany the Lord, but the delighter of Raghus gave him suitable replies each time. Sri Ram's command could not be violated either. Cruel was the turn fate had taken, there was no help. Bowing his head at the feet of Sri Ram, Lakshman, and Sita, he turned back as a merchant who had lost his capital. As he drove the chariot, the horses turned their eyes towards Sri Ram and neighed. Overcome with grief at this sight, the Nishads, Guha's men, beat their heads and lamented. When even beasts felt so miserable on being torn away from him, how could his subjects and his father and mother hope to live without him? Sri Ram dismissed Sumantra against the latter's will, and himself arrived at the bank of the heavenly stream Ganga immediately afterwards. He called for a boat, but the ferryman would not bring it. The latter said, I know your secret about the dust of your lotus feet. Everyone says it is some drug possessing the quality of turning things into human beings. By its very touch, a rock was transformed into a charming woman, and wood is not harder than stone. It is my boat itself gets If my boat itself gets converted into hermit's wife like Ahalya, I shall be robbed of the very means of my subsistence, in that my boat will disappear. It is by means of this boat that I maintain the whole of my family. I know or no other trade. If therefore, my lord, you must cross the river, permit me to lave your lotus feet. So this is Kevat talking to Sri Ram, and the boatman Kevat evidently refers here in his own rustic yet humorous way to Ahalya, who had been transformed into a rock by the curse of her husband Gautam and was restored to her human form by the very touch of Sri Ram's feet. So Kevat requests Sri Ram, I will let you board the boat only when I have bathed your lotus feet. I seek no toll from you. I swear by you, O Ram, as well as by King Dashrath, that what I tell you is all true. Let Lakshman shoot me with his arrows if he will, but until I have washed your feet, I will not, O gracious Lord of Tulsidas, ferry you across. On hearing these words of the ferryman, mysterious though imbued with love, the all-merciful Lord looked at Janak's daughter and Lakshman and smiled. The all-compassionate Lord smilingly said, do that which may prevent the loss of your boat. Bring water at once and lave my feet. We are getting late. Take us across. The same gracious Lord, by uttering whose name only once men cross the boundless ocean of mundane existence, and for whose 3 strides the universe proved too small, thus importuned an ordinary boatman. Though bewildered by the Lord's words, the celestial river Ganga rejoiced on beholding the nails of his toes. On receiving Sri Ram's command, the ferryman brought a wood basin full of water. In great joy and with a heart overflowing with love, he proceeded to bathe the Lord's lotus feet. Raining flowers on him, all the gods envied his lot and said there was none so meritorious as he. Having laved the Lord's feet and drunk of the water in which they had been immersed along with the other members of his family, he thereby transported the souls of his diseased forebears across the ocean of metempsychosis, and then gladly took the Lord across the Ganga. Getting down from the boat, Sita and Ram stood on the sands of the Ganga along with Guha and Lakshman. The ferryman too got down and fell prostrate before the Lord, who felt uncomfortable at the thought that he had given nothing to the ferryman. Sita, however, who could read the mind of her beloved Lord, took off her jeweled ring with a cheerful heart. The gracious Lord said, "Take your toll." But the ferryman clasped his feet in great distress. "What have I not already received, my lord? The fire of my errors, sorrows, and indigence has been quenched today. I worked for my livelihood for a long time. It is only today that God has given me an adequate and handsome return. By your grace, my compassionate Lord, I want nothing now. While returning whatever you bestow on me, I shall thankfully accept that boon." The Lord, as well as Lakshman and Sita, did their utmost, but the ferryman could accept nothing. The all merciful Ram therefore dismissed him after bestowing him on the boon of unalloyed devotion. So, in this section, we saw how Sri Ram depicts that when we come into this world as in the form of a human being, we have to go through this ocean of mundane existence. And as our Babaji used to say, that it is our journey. Nobody can do your journey for you. You have to have your own sanskars and your karma. And as Lakshman refers here to Guha, that it's your own karmas that matter in the end. And Babaji also used to say that there is always positives and negatives, pain and pleasure. So the world exists because there is evil and good. If there is only evil, the world will not exist. If there is only good, then also the world will not exist, at least not in Kali Yuga. So there is to maintain the balance, the world has good and evil. It's up to us to choose whether we want to be good or and how we want to lead our life in a simple and religious way. Om. Jai Shri Ram.